We have one slide left from chapter 1. And now I'm not going to, we won't have lecture on every outline or every point in the chapter. That's why I have you do the chapter as outlines also. I will hit on the key things, and if something is not covered in lecture or with the slides, but will be on the test, it will be most likely something from the chapter that I did not go over or present on the slides. So that's why it's important that you read the chapters and do the outlines. But I will also, before the test, try to give you a idea of everything that's going to be on the test, which again, you have 3 days to do and is open book. And you can use the slides. You cannot, however, pull up all the lectures and have it paused on a point where I'm speaking. Only the textbook and the slides and any notes you take. Democracy, the three things that we want to end on from chapter 1 were the three key principles of liberty, equality, and democracy. Liberty was something that was very prevalent in the discussions of philosophers and the elite during the time of the revolution. Starting with your French philosophers and many other European elites, educated people, liberty was a very hot topic, so to speak. So that's why it's in, that's why it was so prevalent in the 13 colonies. Our liberty is being trampled upon by the British government, the tyrant King George in Parliament. Equality became a very important concept. Now, as we get into the Declaration and then the Constitution here in a little bit, we'll talk about what exactly that meant. While there was, and when we say a prejudice back then, it's not the same as prejudice today. Yes, white European males were prejudiced, but it wasn't a hateful prejudice. It was an evolutionary prejudice. And it continued on with, eventually in the next century, Darwinian evolution coming out in science. It was then applied to the races. So evolution, the prejudice of that time, where white Europeans were considered more intelligent than people of other races, was more based on evolutionary thinking, science, observation. It wasn't a hatred as prejudice is usually represented today. So when we talk about equality in the Declaration and in the Constitution, it's not an equality where they think everybody is the same as far as talents and abilities and intellect, but everybody should have political equality, equality before the law. It wasn't perfectly instituted at the beginning, and we're still trying to work out the implications of political equality for all people. It's been a struggle in our country, and that's why Okay, it says my internet is unstable, so let me make sure I don't get cut off here. Are you still with us, Keely? I don't see you. Okay. Are you still there, Keely?
Yes, I am.
Okay. So we'll talk a little bit more about equality. And then the third thing was democracy, which democracy in its most raw definition from the meaning of the word is where the people rule. Democracy, pure democracy, was something that our founding fathers were afraid of, because for them, they worried about the most base form of it, which would be mob rule. So sometimes you might hear pure democracy called mobocracy, where the mob, those that have the most power and most strength and influence, call the shots. Our founders were afraid of that. That's why they worked out a republic or a representative democracy, where power comes indirectly from the people, who elect those who will then do the governing. We are also a constitutional democracy, where those that govern, and some of you have already written about the three branches of our government: the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judicial branch. Those who govern are not free to do whatever they want. They are constrained by the Constitution, which is the highest law of our land. In other words, we believe in the rule of law. And so this was very important to the founders, because at the time, King George was using his power, as they felt, to abuse the colonists. King George was accountable to nobody. And so if we're going to have a president in our country, if we're going to have an executive branch where there is one individual who is granted, I don't want to say power, I want to say the opportunity to exert a lot of influence, this individual must be accountable to something. We don't want another king in America. So the Constitution, which is the supreme law of the land, is how our society will be run, the rule of law. And so you guys know, as you saw last year, that we can remove a president. We didn't remove President Trump, but he was impeached. And he was the third president. See, Andrew Johnson, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, the third president to be impeached. Richard Nixon was on his way to being impeached when he resigned. Now, all three of those men were impeached, but they were not removed. You have to, both houses of the Congress have to vote to remove him. So when I say they were impeached, that means all three of them were voted by the House of Representatives to be removed. But then when it went to the Senate did not vote to remove them. They're still impeached. They're just not removed. I believe Richard Nixon would have been removed if he hadn't resigned. And I think he knew that. So anyway, that's just a little rabbit trail about impeachment. But the point is we're a constitutional democracy as well as a representative democracy, in that the Constitution is the highest authority in the land, not the president, not the Congress, and not the Supreme Court. President Lincoln gave a great definition of democracy in his Gettysburg Address. It is a government of the people and by the people and for the people. All right, so let's move on to chapter 2, where we will now look at hold on a second. There we go. We will look at the formation of our nation. Again, a constitutional democracy. And have you guys seen this great 80s movie, The Princess Bride? A lot of memes from this great line about inconceivable. But in the same way, democracy is thrown around in America, and a lot of people don't know what it means here in America. It means a constitutional republic, not a everybody rules and everybody has ultimate say. Everybody, again, everybody who can vote, that is, over the age of 18, without a criminal record, everybody who is eligible to vote can indirectly influence our nation by voting for the leaders that they want. And as you know, half of our nation voted for Trump and he did not get in. So did I lose? How many of you, did I lose anybody? In a sense, half of the, okay, it's not on share mode, is it? I guess it's kind of cloudy out, so we're kind of having some internet issues. Now, can you see it? So in a sense, a little over half of voting Americans have put the president in, but he is then everybody's president. And he's accountable to everybody. So just a quick little refresher. American political philosophy is influenced by John Locke. The idea that the people have created a social contract with the people who govern. We will elect you, but you must represent us. If you don't represent us the way we want you to, we'll remove you. So it's a contract where people give their consent. I mentioned Thomas Hobbes. He wrote a book called Leviathan in 1651. And he wanted to write a book about the science of politics that was based on one indisputable principle. And that is we want to make sure that the strongest element in human nature is under control of reason. Thomas Hobbes said that reason is not the strongest element of human nature, but passion is. And how true is this? We see a lot of things on the news. If you watch the news, we see a lot of people's passions coming out. And reason kind of takes a back burner. People don't know how to dialogue anymore. People don't know how to have a discussion with people that they disagree with because they let their emotions and their passions control them. And so we want to make sure that this strongest passion is under control, because if we don't control passion, it leads to fear. Fear can lead to violent death, and this leads to this strongest indisputable principle of self-preservation. So we don't throw aside self-preservation. We just want to make sure that we construct a theory of politics in a way that is controlled by reason that will protect self-preservation. And so that's where we get down the line with Locke and Mills, the idea of life, liberty, and property. We're protecting these things. These things have to do with our self-preservation. But we want to protect it based on reason and well-constructed governing principles, and not passion. You know, when we see riots where people are burning and looting and hurting other people and killing people, that is what happens when passion runs unrestrained. All right, social contract theory, Hobbes, this guy here, John Locke, and then another guy, Rousseau, had great influence on our government. If you've ever watched the National Treasure movies, you see Rousseau mentioned in the second movie. Rousseau was an important French philosopher. Social contract theory holds that the people choose to give the state enough power to promote the well-being of everyone, and that all political power comes from the will of the people. So you have Hobbes and his undisputable principle, along with Locke, combined in our Declaration and in our Constitution. The people will choose the governors, and we'll give you power, but your task is to protect and to promote the well-being and the self-preservation of all citizens. So did anybody get a chance to read the Declaration, or did anybody read the Declaration since Wednesday? Well, it's not a real long document. You can read it in about 10 minutes or less. Excuse me. And there are, I believe, 27 or 28 grievances that Jefferson laid out. Things like, you have taxed us without our consent. There went Panama. Let's see if I can, oh, there they are. Things like, you have taxed us without our consent. You have forced us to give soldiers a place to live, the Quartering Act. So there's like 27, 28 grievances. And basically, in the Declaration, we have called King George a tyrant. Tyrannosaurus Rex, right? It means the tyrant king. Rex in Latin means king. Tyrannus one who is a tyrant. Basically, we were calling King George a tyrant king. He was the T-Rex of Britain. And so we declare and we break away. And so here's the principles that are in the Declaration, or major themes, excuse me. There are truths that are self-evident. Things like human equality. Now, again, remember what they mean here. All men are equal before the law, politically. Not necessarily equal monetarily or concerning intelligence or talents, but everyone is equal before the law. And everyone has natural rights. These natural rights in the Declaration, it's acknowledged that these natural rights come from a creator who has created all people. And among those rights are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Everybody has been given life who is on the planet. And when we talk about liberty, again, we've got to understand, we got to think politically. Liberty to believe how we want to believe. Not liberty to do whatever we want, right? If you remember, we are to, government is to keep us from harming other people. We don't have the liberty to kill another person. We don't have the liberty to steal someone else's property. No, the liberty that we're talking about here is liberty of conscience. We can believe, and specifically in matters of religion or not having a religion, we are free to believe according to our conscience. This was very important. Does anybody want to say why? Considering the climate of the 18th century? Anybody? Bueller? Bueller? Fry? You guys know about that movie? Bueller should give it away. Ferris Bueller's Day Off. Come on, a great 80s classic. Where else can you see a guy join a parade in downtown Chicago and sing Shake It Up Baby Now, and the whole town is celebrating? It's just classic. Classic 80s nostalgia. I'm gonna have to go watch it after this class. Anyway, where was I? Oh yeah. What was the climate for this liberty? In Europe, you had, especially in England, you would have one king who was Catholic, and they would persecute the Protestants. And then the next king might be, or queen, but like Queen Bloody Mary. The next monarch might be Protestant, and they start persecuting the Catholics. And you had other countries like France that was predominantly Catholics, and they were persecuting Protestants. And so when we talk about liberty of conscience in the Declaration of Independence, not only are we free to choose what occupation we want to do, not only are we free to, because remember the great chain of being, if you were a serf or a slave, you would never move out of your station in life. Same way, if you are a king, or if you're a knight or a vassal, you could not move up into the gentry. We believe that liberty includes being able to improve your lot in life. Maybe you're a farmer, but you work hard and you move up into the elite. You're free to do that. But not only that, there was freedom to believe whatever you wanted to believe about God or not believe in a God. Liberty of conscience. And no king and no government can tell you what to believe. There is a separation when it comes to the state and the church. The state's only function is to protect the church from persecution. The state cannot tell the church what to believe or how to do the sacraments or whatever it might be pertaining to the church. And likewise, the state cannot tell individuals, you have to pay your money to this church, or you have to go to this church, or whatever it may be. So that's what we're talking about when we talk about liberty in the Declaration. Basically, everybody is free, has the right to pursue happiness. Another major theme in the Declaration is that the government has a purpose, and that is to make sure these rights are protected, secure. That's why after the Constitution was written, in what year was it written and finished? I'm putting you guys on the spot here. Constitution, not Declaration. 1787, Constitution is written. But it wasn't until 1791 that the 10 amendments were added, the Bill of Rights. So originally, the Constitution did not include a Bill of Rights for individuals. Well, there was a lot of founding fathers who were afraid that this would give too much power to the government. So they pleaded for a Bill of Rights, and then James Madison basically is the author of the Bill of Rights, which is the first 10 amendments. Now we have 27 amendments. An amendment is something that shows that our Constitution is a living document. It can be amended, specifically in the area of individual rights. So the government is to protect our rights as citizens. Justice is measured by the people who give their consent to be governed. If we feel like someone who is in the governing position is not governing justly, we can remove them. We believe that we have a right to revolution. Whenever any form of government is destructive of the security of natural rights, it is incumbent upon us to rebel or have a revolution. But even if we were to have a revolution, there are limits upon it. We must do so with prudence. That's why in the Declaration, Jefferson wrote that governments shouldn't be overthrown for basically any and every reason. Something that is a light cause or a transient cause. It's got to be a good, solid justification for revolution. We didn't want to start a revolution in 1776 just because King George liked the color purple more than he liked the color red. That wasn't a justifiable reason for revolution. I just made that up off the top of my head. It had to be a heavy-duty reason. And also, experience is another limit. People are more disposed to suffer when the things that are happening to them are sufferable. People are more disposed to put up with suffering than to right themselves. We're more disposed to do that. So we look back at experience, and if we can make something right and stop people from suffering, we should do that. Now, I'm not asking for your opinion, because I'm sure we all have opinions about the January 6th incident where many people stormed the White House. Depending upon which news you listen to, right? Some will call it an insurrection. Some will say it was like a new revolution. I'm not giving my opinion on it. I'm not asking for your opinion. But how can we look at it objectively and say, oh, yeah, that could have been a revolution, or no, that was an insurrection? Because think about it, in 1776, many Americans were like, let's have a revolution, but there was still a great amount of people who were called loyalists who said, no, we don't want to have an insurrection against Britain. That is wrong. We must stay subject to them. So these are the things that Jefferson wanted to spell out in the Declaration of Independence. And so really, the Declaration, it's really not a declaration just to Britain. It's a declaration to the whole world, to France and Spain and all other nations that would be watching, that we are declaring our independence. We are breaking away from our mother country because they have been abusing us, and we have been suffering for a long time, and it is now our duty, not only our right, but it's our duty to break away and establish a new country that's going to be based on liberty and equality. And it's going to be a government where the people have the power and they choose who will be their leaders. And the leaders' primary responsibility is to secure the rights of the people, and they will be held accountable by the law. Any questions on the themes of the Declaration? Even if anything's a little fuzzy or unclear, don't hesitate to ask a question. All right, so in the brief, I asked you to, the brief about the Declaration and the Articles and the Constitution. After reading about the Articles, if there was anything that surprised you. And what I was shooting for was, most Americans do not realize that the Constitution, of course, the Declaration was never a law, right? The Declaration was never a formal government document. It was simply a declaration saying we're breaking away from England. It was written in 1776. The Revolutionary War began in early 1775, right, with Concord and Lexington. And the Revolutionary War went all the way to 1783. It was in 1781 when we finally got our first government document, and that is the Articles of Confederation. So the thing that I believe surprises a lot of Americans is the Constitution is our second government treaty document. The first government that we had was from 1781 to 1787 under the Articles of Confederation. And they were written during the Revolutionary War. So we're still fighting with England, even though we have officially declared that we have broken away from them. It's not like they said, oh, okay. It's not like King George said, okay, you guys are right. I've read your declaration and I agree with you. We'll leave you alone. Have a good life. No, 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 no. King George in Parliament, they were mad. They were ticked off. How dare these insolent, ungrateful American colonists who are British subjects, who enjoy our protection, how dare they even think about breaking away from us? We're going to go over there and we're going to administer some discipline, and we're going to bring them back in, and we're going to hold those accountable who signed the document. We're going to try you with treason. Now on Monday, I'll show you a great clip from National Treasure about what would happen to anyone who signed the Declaration of Independence if they got caught by the British government. So the British are still fighting us, wanting to get us back in the fold. So it's during that time that our founding fathers say, hey, we need a governing document. We've declared independence. Now, how are we going to function as 13 independent colonies? And so that's what the Articles of Declaration were, our first written form of government. So we'll pick up there Monday with the Articles. Any questions before we head on to the cafeteria?
Hey, I have a question. I accidentally turned in my brief, and whenever I turned it in, it did not have all of my work on it, but I don't know if I could fix that.
It had what on it?
I turned it in. And
Oh, is this Brandy Joe?
No, this is Adriana Jones.
Oh, I'm sorry. You turned it in and what?
I turned it in, but it doesn't have the rest of my work on it.
Oh, okay. I'll just clear it for you and you can resubmit.
Thank you.
Who is that again?
Adriana Jones.
Okay. Adriana,
Yes.
do you get any jokes like Indiana Jones?
Not anymore. I've went to the
Okay.
school our life.
I was just wondering because the ending there, Iana Jones.
Yeah, no, I get that.
Okay. I as a pastor, I don't know if you guys have ever heard of Awanas. So this Wednesday night program, I used to do India Awana Jones. I have a jacket and a hat and the pants, and I have a satchel, and I just love Indiana Jones. But anyway, I won't tease you about that. Have a great weekend. If you would, read the Articles of Confederation. They're shorter than the Constitution, so read them and you'll be prepared for Monday. And we'll begin with another Bull Moose Monday leadership lesson. Until then, have a great weekend.